Welcome into 5 Wide Fantasy. Today, we're talking must-start and must-sit wide receivers for Week 2 of the fantasy football season. We're going to cover each and every matchup all the way from Thursday night to the doubleheader on Monday night. So if you guys enjoy this video, be sure to let me know. Hit that subscribe button, would really appreciate it, and as well hit the like button if this information became valuable to you. So with the numbers that we usually talk about each and every week at the wide receivers, I'm going to keep the numbers to last season and the rankings at those categories last season. I think by probably week 4, I'll start to use the data from this year to help us measure how good these units are. But for right now, we'll take what we learned from week 1, combining it with these stats and information from last season to go off of as well. Today's video also brought to you by The Stunt. If you guys haven't downloaded The Stunt is a all sports social media app. So it takes some of the favorite features of your favorite social media apps, puts it in one place, just about sports. So we're on there posting video content, daily posts, and exclusive stuff that you guys wouldn't see on the YouTube channel. Give you more fantasy advice, conversations about the league in general. And then on Fridays, 4 p.m. Eastern time, we host a live room where I can answer all of your start-sit questions. We get a lot in the YouTube comments, but I'm able to answer yours specifically, help you make decisions when setting your lineup once we have even more injury information as well. So the link to download The Stunt will be down below in the description and as well in the pinned comments. So really appreciate it. Stunt is a very awesome sponsor for us here. Helps us to be able to do what we do each and every day to get you guys this information. So if you can download the app, follow OwnersBox on there, and you'll be notified when we go live at 4 p.m. every Friday on The Stunt. Let's get into these matchups. All right, starting on Thursday night, Vikings, Eagles. We've got a Vikings team that was throwing the ball quite a bit against Tampa Bay in week 1. I would expect that to continue because the Eagles do look like a much improved run defense. Now with Carter and Davis, the two Georgia studs they've taken the last 2 years in the draft, playing in the middle of their defense at the D tackle spots. They were really good against the run against the Patriots. So I expect the Vikings to lean on their pass game quite a bit in this one, also with James Bradbury likely to be missing too. So it makes Justin Jefferson, your obviously every week starter, but it brings Jordan Addison into the conversation. And he wasn't on the field as much as KJ Osborne, but he was targeted far more. Obviously got that end zone target as well and scored a touchdown for you. In a lot of leagues, I think in definitely a 14 team or 12 teams even, he's definitely going to be a consideration for you. And I think the volume should be there. He's obviously competing with TJ Hawkinson as well. He's going to need to be a guy that finds the end zone to really give you explosive weeks because he's probably not going to post 15 target week that Justin Jefferson does, but he's starting to already earn opportunity in just his first game of the year. So I think you can play him in week 2 here against the Eagles. The Eagles side, really not much to talk about. We're obviously starting Devontae Smith. We're obviously starting A.J. Brown, and this Eagles offense against a Vikings team that I think the defense continues to be pretty poor, despite what we saw last week against the Bucs. Our next game, Chargers, Titans. The Chargers coming off of giving up over 400 passing yards to Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins. Now they get a matchup with the Titans. I don't expect that to be anywhere near the same. The Titans should be running the ball quite a bit against this Chargers defense. And the Chargers last season were a good coverage unit. I think they can bounce back here. They were 6th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So in my mind, DeAndre Hopkins can still be a start here for you. I don't have a problem with that. The Chargers should drum up some pressure with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, but we saw Hopkins as a reliable guy for Tannehill and one that was kind of hyper-targeted in this offense. Traylon Burks, not someone I'm looking to play. Chigga Okonkwo at the tight end spot, not looking to play. There should be a lot of volume here for the Titans in the run game. As opposed to the Chargers, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are absolute must-starts in this matchup against the Titans. The Chargers' passing volume will be incredibly high. The Titans were 31st in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers last season, 28th in passing EPA from their opponents too. So this is a fire up both of these guys in this matchup, even with Williams obviously coming off a down game, but he did get hurt in that game and miss a little bit of time. Expect him to bounce back this week. Next one, Bears, Bucks. A Bears team coming off a really rough outing against the Packers last week, especially if you were playing and starting DJ Moore. Now, Moore isn't a player that I was drafting or play. He's not really on any of my teams, but for a lot of you that did draft him with some decent draft capital, you want to hear some positivity and reason to play him this week. And I think there is good reason to play him. I think Justin Fields will have a lot more time in the pocket to work than he did against the Packers defense. The Bucs have little to no pass rush. I think that as well, the Bears will struggle to run the football. Still got Vita Vea in the middle of the defense for the Bucs, so I think they will lean on Fields and his arm. And I think very obviously DJ Moore is that most talented receiver that they didn't get the ball to nearly enough last week. This week, I think they do. I think operating this offense will be much easier for the Bears and Justin Fields. On the Bucs side, A matchup with the Bears, I think, is another positive one for this offense. Baker should be under less pressure compared to last week as well. He was under pressure quite a bit against the Vikings. The Bears' pass rush is a little bit more underwhelming. Yannick Ngakoue, I know, had a sack last week. He's really the only talented guy on their edge rush amongst their edge rushers. But the Bears 30th in passing EPA, 20th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. We mentioned you looking at their pass rush grade, and their coverage grade hasn't been good either. So Chris Godwin, Mike Evans are definitely players you can still start. Evans seems to still be that end zone downfield option. There should be opportunities for downfield plays against this Bears pass rush, and then Godwin, that reliable target over the middle that I'm basically starting each and every week. Packers, Falcons. What do we do with the Christian Watson? Hopefully he plays this week. Perhaps he doesn't. I haven't really gotten a good feel for that so far. This is on Wednesday when I'm recording. So if Christian Watson isn't playing, Romeo Doubs can be a flex level type of play for you. He'd be in my probably the wide receiver 30-ish range for me. I know the Falcons are a team that are all red here in our grades from last season. They were pretty decent, improved against the Panthers defense, the rookie quarterback. We've got a guy in his first season with Jordan Love as well. But last year they did really struggle, 31st in passing EPA. So it is a unit you can potentially take advantage of. But I like the Packers to lean more on the ground game and their backs here against the Falcons, because the Falcons did struggle a little bit against the run last week and did throughout the season. So I'm not incredibly high on, if Christian Watson is playing, I'm definitely starting him. But as opposed to the other players, like a Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Luke Musgrave, these are the guys that I think will just split up the opportunities, and it won't be a ton of upside from any of them. On the Falcons side, what you really want to know is, can you play Drake London after a brutal week? I would lean against it. I do think the Falcons will once again lean on the ground game, could find more success. The Packers were pretty good against the run last week, but last season really struggled. So Packers are a pretty good coverage unit with Jair Alexander healthy too. Should see a lot of Drake London. So I just don't trust Desmond Ridder, and it doesn't seem like the offense does. I know London was good at the tail end of the season with Desmond Ridder, but now that the Kyle Pitts is in the fold, Bijan Robinson led the team in targets, it's becoming less and less of a confident thing to be able to do. So I think you'll probably have some better options. If you were thinking about, do I play a Jordan Addison or Drake London, I'd probably lean Jordan Addison's way, because I just see the volume being a little bit better there. And London wasn't one to find the end zone too much last season. Colts, Texans. The Colts are hopefully going to have another week of Anthony Richardson. Potentially could be Gardner Minshew. It looks like Richardson's going to be fine. Michael Pittman put together a good performance, led the team in targets, was obviously out there. I think he led the team in routes run, but Josh Downs was out there a bit, Kylan Granson as well. Alec Pierce was out there. But it's good to see that Pittman was able to kind of dominate the target share in this offense. That gives me some confidence against this Texans team, who were pretty good in allowing fantasy points to wide receivers. They were actually fourth. That's a lot of games where teams were able to run the football because of the fact they were being in positive game scripts. I think this game is going to be pretty competitive, and the Texans were not a good coverage unit last year, 55.8 coverage grade from PFF. So Pittman is a pretty solid start for you this week. It was good to see Richardson get off on the right foot to start his career in the NFL. And then the Texans side, the Colts are a team that don't have that big time edge rusher that you're really, really fearing, but it is a pretty solid group. And it seems like for the Texans, there isn't really a true guy that stuck out in week one. Robert Woods and Nico Collins both posted double-digit targets. I do think Dameon Pierce will be a little bit more of a focal point offensively, because last week was a really tough matchup against the Ravens. Now we get a softer one here to be able to run the ball against the Colts. I'm not ready to make a decision on this offense yet. I need another week to see it. This will be a bit of an easier matchup, which will definitely help them. But the Colts are pretty good at allowing fantasy points to wide receivers last year, 9th in the league. So I'd avoid going to any of these options, Collins or Woods. There's some intrigue with Collins for sure as the downfield threat. He proved to be that with his A-dot last week, but I don't want to go and play him in this matchup quite yet. Seahawks, Lions. The Seahawks are the team we definitely want to start with. Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith-Njigba not making much of an impact in week one. DK Metcalf had an okay week. Solid week, I guess, because he found the end zone, but otherwise wasn't too inspiring of confidence. But I do think DK is a weekly start because of what he can do in the red zone and a constant end zone target for Geno Smith. He proved that last year, leading the league in end zone targets. Now for these other guys, Lockett and JSN, not running as many routes, some of them coming off the field at times. The Lions are a team that last year were very gettable, dead last in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, 29th in passing EPA, so really struggled last year. They looked all right against the Chiefs. I think the Seahawks can run the ball effectively here too. So I'd probably lean against playing either one of them, but I definitely want to play DK. It is a good matchup. I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to play Lockett or JSN, but I need a little bit more time with this offense. Hopefully they bounce back from what was a really underwhelming second half in week 1 there against the Rams. And then on the Lions side, there's really not a lot to talk about. This is a Monroe St. Brown, and that's about it. I'm not looking to play a Josh Reynolds. Who else is in that offense that I'm forgetting? But Marvin Jones. Nobody else here in this offense is really worth starting against this in this matchup, or really any. So not much to talk about there. Ravens, Bengals. We've got a Ravens team that's really banged up right now. Tyler Linderbaum and Ronnie Stanley might be out. Two really, like, the crux of this offensive line could be missing here, which would be really tough to replace. Zay Flowers, though, just a constant target hog for this team. When he was on the field, they were looking to get him the ball, and getting him the ball in all sorts of different areas of the field as well. If the pass protection struggles, Zay Flowers should still see plenty of volume. I think this speaks volumes, especially with Rashad Bateman's snap count not being very high either. He was behind both Odell Beckham and Zay Flowers in snaps and routes run. So Flowers is a guy that I think the team is confident in. I'm pretty confident in playing week in and week out. This matchup with the Bengals isn't one I'm incredibly excited about. He's probably in that wide receiver 3 territory for me, but still think he's a guy that you can get good volume from and should be confident in playing because he's a dynamic after the catch threat too. The Bengals side of things, I guess one last thing would be Odell Beckham, not someone I'm particularly looking to play. Definitely need to see more target volume and see this offense look a little bit better before I want to play him. On the Bengals side, not much to talk about here. We're not starting Tyler Boyd in this matchup, even though the Ravens secondary, I think, has some problems with Marlon Humphrey expected to be out. Marcus Williams being out for a little bit too. The secondary can be had, but I'm more looking for Chase and Higgins to have big bounce back weeks as opposed to taking the risk on Tyler Boyd here in week 2. Moving to Raiders and Bills. Starting with the Raiders offense, Jacoby Myers in that concussion, I'd be shocked if he does play this week. That leaves Devontae Adams as really the only startable player to even consider playing in your lineup this week, so not much to talk about on the Raiders side. With the Bills, we're firing up Stephon Diggs as always. Gabe Davis becomes a little bit more of an intriguing play against this Raiders defense, who was actually dead last in EPA against the pass last season. Got a pretty good pass rush. The Bills can definitely defend that pass rush. They've got a pretty solid offensive line, so there could be some more downfield plays being able to be made for this team offensively. And that makes Gabe Davis like a decent flex option for you, a risky one where we're looking for explosive plays. But I do have confidence in Gabe Davis this year, so this is a matchup where I feel definitely a lot more comfortable starting him. Last week we were sitting him. This week, Raiders matchup. Bills need a real get-back spot offensively after last week. Davis will definitely be involved there. Chiefs, Jaguars. We said this on the waiver wire. There's no consideration to any Chiefs wide receivers. Keep Sky Moore on your bench if you kept him. Keep Kadarius Toney on your bench if you didn't drop him either. Don't be playing any of these wide receivers. Even if Travis Kelce doesn't play, I'm not taking the chance, even though I think this is a matchup they could score some points. You know, Blake Bell becomes a conversation point for you at the tight end spot because he did lead the team, or I think he was tied for the team lead, or second behind MVS in routes run. It's really like MVS would be your best consideration. He'd be the guy I would be the most confident in playing of any of these wide receivers. On the Jaguars side, I think Christian Kirk is going to be a sit right now with the way that his route participation looks for the time being. But it does mean in my mind, Zay Jones, if you added him off the wire, is someone I would consider playing against this Chiefs defense. One where the Jags will be looking to keep up with them offensively, especially if Travis Kelce is back. And with Chris Jones, should help their run defense a little bit. And the Jags will need to move the ball through the air. The Chiefs were 22nd last season in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So that makes Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones guys I would be willing to start. Jones definitely in that flex territory. He's a guy that I feel better. I'd rather play Zay Jones than a Jordan Addison. I'll say that. But like, let's say, who would be a Gabe Davis? Gabe Davis, let's say, and Zay Jones. I think I'd probably go Gabe Davis, just with a little bit more certainty with him being on the field, pretty much all the time. 49ers, Rams. Starting on the 49ers side of the ball. The 49ers usage with Brandon Ayuk, fantastic. 8 targets, 8 receptions, over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. Got to go back to him here against this Rams team. 27th in EPA last season against the pass. Bottom 10 in coverage grade and pass rush grade. That'll continue again this year. So definitely can be had through the air and should be able to score some points here, this 49ers team. That makes Deebo Samuel a guy I really didn't like going into the season. Don't have him on any of my teams, but if you do, this is a matchup where you would play him. He led the team in routes run, so he's definitely always out there. We'll see how his target share evolves over the course of the season, but in a positive matchup, I would definitely be looking to play him. On the Rams side, Puka Nacua is a top 24 wide receiver right now moving forward. This is a team that won't be able to run the ball effectively. The 49ers have the best run defense, or had the best run defense in the NFL last year. They'll probably continue to be a top 3 unit this year. But they were a team that, because of that, 27th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So it makes Nacua an awesome start here because the volume should be fantastic for him. He is the number one option. I'm absolutely starting him. A guy like Tutu Atwell, I could see you wanting to play, or Van Jefferson. This is a matchup in a deeper league. I would definitely look to target these guys, 14-team, 16-team league. But in your shallower leagues, 12-team and less, these are players that are a little bit too risky and more players that give me the vibes of, like a one-trick wonder type of deal where they're not going to be able to consistently do this because I don't think they're the number one option as this team currently operates right now. Moving to Giants, Cardinals. Starting on the Giants side, nobody. I'm not targeting an offense at their wide receivers that weren't targeted in the first half of their game in week 1. There's still a lot to figure out with this wide receiver core. Paris Campbell, Darius Slayton, Jalen Hyatt. There's a lot of guys they're rotating through. I don't know if we'll ever have certainty with this position or with this receiving core, but for right now, we'll definitely leave them alone on that side of the ball. The Cardinals are pretty much more of the same. I think James Conner will be leaned on heavily against this Giants defense. The Giants were a middling unit against the pass last year, but there's still way too much to figure out. Rondale Moore's not running enough routes. Marquise Brown dealing with the lingering injury, didn't see a lot of targets. They got poor quarterback play. Zach Ertz is getting a lot of opportunity in this offense too, and then you have the running back as well earning targets. So too much of a share, not enough volume. Underwhelming offense, nothing I really want a piece of in this game whatsoever. Jets, Cowboys. You want to know what you can do with Garrett Wilson heading into a really difficult matchup with the Cowboys defense and Zach Wilson now at quarterback. Garrett Wilson will be a weekly start for me. There's not really a team I'm going to be sitting him against, even with the guy they have at quarterback. That's because he'll be hyper-targeted in this offense. We still saw it last year. This isn't going to be a wide receiver 1, but this is a guy that'll definitely confidently be in that wide receiver 2 category because of the because of the volume and target share he will undoubtedly receive. The rest of these wide receivers, Alan Lazard, Mecole Hardman, who barely played, those guys are not in consideration whatsoever against the Cowboys. And then the Cowboys side, really tough matchup. The number 1 team in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, a top 5 team against the pass for sure heading into this season. What do you do with this Cowboys passing offense? CeeDee Lamb will be a weekly play, no doubt about that. Brandon Cooks is a guy that we didn't really get to find out what his role will really look like because of how badly they blew out the Giants. For me, that means I'm going to keep him on my bench this week because of the matchup, how difficult it is, and one that I would expect the Cowboys to probably lead a little bit more on the ground, ensure they take care of the ball because, the only reason the Jets beat the Bills on Monday night was because the Bills couldn't take care of the ball. So if the Cowboys are able to take care of the ball, which they will do by putting the ball on the ground, they'll probably win this game. That's their recipe, and that will probably not include Brandon Cooks when you get into those plans too. We've got about 4 more games left, going to Commanders, Broncos. The Commanders are an offense that is pretty intriguing. Jahan Dotson, this was a great little note that I picked up over the course of the week here, looking into some of these numbers. Jahan Dotson was being moved around quite a bit in this offense. I think he's the number 1 guy for them. They moved him into the slot. He was running actually just barely a little bit more than 50% of his routes from the slot and the rest out wide. To me, moving the guy around like that tells me that this is the guy they want to get the ball to the most. And McLaurin will be exclusively on the outside, so he'll probably draw a lot of Pat Surtain. So I think even with the tough matchup against this Broncos pass defense, Dotson will be a decent start. McLaurin's a guy I want to sit. McLaurin is definitely more in my wide receiver 4 range right now with this really difficult matchup. So Dotson is a guy that's more in the wide receiver 3 range. Not a ton of upside, but I see them, the reason that he's moving into the slot is because of Bieniemy's offense that kind of wants to get the ball to the players in the slot. That's why even Curtis Samuel had 5 targets in week 1. So I really like what they're doing with Dotson. He's a guy I'm very, very high on throughout the year. And this matchup, I think he can take advantage of where he's going to be on the field to find some success and be a decent flex option for you. On the Broncos side, absolutely want to start Courtland Sutton. When we drop our must-start short this week, Sutton will definitely be on there for me because the Commanders are such a good run defense that you've got to be throwing the football against them quite a bit. So I'd be looking at Sutton as the guy, number 1 in this offense. They lose Greg Dulcich as well. We'll keep an eye on Jerry Jeudy and see if he plays. If Jeudy plays, then that makes Sutton a little bit less of a guy I'm as excited about. But the matchup is good for the passing offense, but I don't feel confident playing anyone else if Jeudy is out other than Sutton because of these changes. Maybe who is the backup there in Troutman. Adam Troutman might be a kind of an interesting tight end option for you in some of your deeper leagues, but that's the breakdown there in this Commanders-Broncos game. Dolphins, Patriots. We've got a Dolphins offense that operated at a crazy high level last week. They go into a matchup against this Patriots defense that is very, very good, second in EPA against the pass. We're quite as good in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. But again, I think it's not an indication of this defense. It's still very, very good. But Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are absolute must-starts there, so not much to talk about on that side. And the Patriots are a team, in my mind, that I did like Kendrick Bourne off the wire, but Bourne's a player I'm only starting in really, really plus matchups. And the Dolphins were a team that weren't great against the pass last year, but were 8th in fantasy points allowed to receivers, and they have a big scheme change on defense with Vic Fangio coming in. They're going to be much better against the pass and a little bit worse against the run. So Bourne isn't in a really big plus matchup. I know the Patriots are at home here. Regardless, I don't really want to go to him quite yet because I think this will be a bit more of a split where the Patriots could have more success on the ground, so you won't see Mac Jones dropping back 40. He might have almost dropped back 50 times in that game last week. So I'm going to lean towards not starting any of my Patriots receivers in this one. Okay, Monday night doubleheader, starting with Saints-Panthers. The Saints offense is one that threw the ball quite a bit in week 1, but they get a matchup here against the Panthers where they'll be probably a lot more balanced. The Titans' run defense is elite, had to lead on the pass quite a bit. We went at that at length leading up to week 1. So for the Saints, Rashid Shaheed's a player you might have added off the wire. Definitely a good week last week, finding the end zone too. He's still the 3 in this offense, running less routes, seeing less targets, coming up with less receptions. So in a matchup where the passing volume won't be as high, Shaheed's not a player I'm looking to play. Thomas is a guy that I'm really intrigued by because I do think he can score some touchdowns for this team. But Chris Olave, tough first half, but really bounced back and got some volume in the second half, which was great. So Olave is a guy I'm confidently playing as like a wide receiver, back-end wide receiver 2. And then for Thomas, he's more of that flex option that you're looking for some touchdown upside. He could potentially give you that, but nothing I'm crazy high on. I thought he was going to see a little bit more targets and volume, but he didn't completely separate from, a guy like Shaheed chipping in and Juwan Johnson. So nothing I wouldn't be absolutely looking to play Michael Thomas, but he can be a player that I can see in my lineup in some cases too. On the Panthers side, not really anything I'm going to get in on. This was a pretty good pass defense last year. Still should be pretty solid this year. This team's still figuring a lot out. Terrace Marshall and Jonathan Mingo led the team in routes run. Adam Thielen was just behind them. Hayden Hurst was a guy a little bit more involved. I got to see more from this team to see if there's any value we can eke out of it, but I'm sure for a lot of you guys, there's not many of these guys rostered. For Adam Thielen, he might be on your roster. I definitely wouldn't be looking to play him this week, though. Last game up, Browns-Steelers. Down week for the Browns receivers. Deshaun Watson did not look good. I don't know how that gets a lot better because the Steelers have a really good pass rush. Lose Jack Conklin as well, the Browns do for the rest of the season in pass protection. So this could get tougher for Watson in this matchup, going on the road to Pittsburgh with TJ Watt. And they have Highsmith on the other side of the edge who just came off a big year too. They do lose Cameron Hayward, which isn't good for them defensively. But, Cooper is a guy I would still play because he is we've seen him as that downfield target, deep threat, and of course end zone guy for them. They're getting some targets there in week 1 too. Elijah Moore, I like. They're moving him around in the offense. They're definitely keeping him on the field a ton. He ran more routes than Amari Cooper did. But if this offense on the passing game is going to operate like this, I'm a little bit worried with playing him just yet. But it's good to see him getting the ball in some rushing situations too. There's definitely a lot to like moving forward. But I'm not there with the Browns offense quite yet. So I'm a little bit skeptical playing anyone there. On the Steelers side of the ball, it's Allen Robinson, it's George Pickens. Those are your options here. I think the Browns' pass defense is legit. Their run defense didn't look too bad last week either, but I do think Matt Canada will lean on the ground game in this one against the Browns because the Browns really did struggle against the run last season, and they looked better, but I'm still not completely sold because they were in a positive game script for most of the afternoon, so the Bengals didn't run the ball all that much. I don't like Matt Canada's offense. He's not capable of creating many downfield explosive plays. That's what Pickens' role is. I'm not looking to start him or Allen Robinson in this one. I just don't have enough confidence in this offense where it stands after what it looked like last week. And for Pickens, I really don't see a lot changing as much as he clearly wants it to, and the team obviously thinks highly of him, but I think the game plan will definitely be running the football quite a bit. Okay, every single matchup of week 2 covered. Your start and your sit players at the wide receiver position for week 2. Again, guys, if you do have more questions, if you have certain start-sit questions you have about specific players in your lineup, we are live on the stunt 4 p.m. Eastern Friday. So we'll have more information on injuries, players that are going to be missing time, or anything that might change with these offenses. updated analysis on these matchups will be coming 4 o'clock Eastern on The Stunt. If you guys want to download the app for both Android and iOS, the link is down below in the description. I'll include it in the pinned comments too. But if there's any players that I didn't even mention that you do want to hear about, definitely drop those down below in the comments section there. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.